Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in the first of today's videos, we're going to be talking about the Dallas Mavericks, a team that had a bit of a quieter offseason by some people's standards. I think the expectations were a bit higher in terms of big name moves for Dallas coming into this offseason, but I think they actually did a really good job, and they're setting themselves up incredibly well, not only for a good season this year, but to potentially be a top team in the West as long as Luka is as good as he is. And so I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about my thoughts on the Mavericks offseason. That's what we're going to be talking about in the first of today's videos. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every day, all throughout the NBA offseason, and we're very, very close to 100,000 subscribers. You can also leave a like rating on the video as well. Helps me out a ton, lets me know that you're enjoying the content, and helps get the video out to more people on YouTube as well. And you can also check me out at various socials at the bottom of the screen outside of these videos. And with all those things said, let's talk about what the Mavericks did this offseason. Let's just go ahead and list all of the moves. So first, the most notable move was that they traded Seth Curry in the second round pick in exchange for Josh Richardson. They also traded DeLon Wright and Justin Jackson for the expiring contract of James Johnson. They signed Trey Burke and they signed Willie Cauley-Stein to relatively small deals. Let's go through these one by one though and talk about why each of them are significant. So I won't spend too much time on the Seth Curry, Josh Richardson thing because I've already kind of talked about it at a couple of different points in a couple of different videos. But there is some salary stuff later on that we can talk about as it relates to this trade specifically. But for the most part, if you're looking at player for player, this is just about the Mavericks getting something that they need, which is more defense, and the Sixers getting something that they need, which is more shooting. It's really as simple as that. And I think that Richardson should be a really, really good fit on this roster as long as he shoots the ball well from three-point range. I really, really like that pickup for Dallas. However, these other three moves we haven't really talked about a ton, and they are all significant. When we're talking about trading away DeLon Wright and Justin Jackson in exchange for James Johnson, there is some player stuff here, but a lot of this is about salary. So James Johnson, when healthy, can be a productive player, and there's a reason that he's getting paid $16 million or something like that this coming season, because when he signed that contract, he was playing really, really well for that Heat team that at the time was signing everybody to big contracts, right? And Johnson, when healthy, is going to be able to defend a little bit, shoot a little bit, and just provide a toughness and a physicality to this team that at times is missing for this group. And you're trading away, a kind of rotation wing and a rotation guard in Wright and Jackson. But more notably for this deal, as we talk about the salary implications of this trade and the previous one, between those two deals, the Mavericks are probably opening up for themselves around $16 million extra in salary cap space for next offseason. The reason that I say maybe or potentially is because Josh Richardson holds an $11 million player option for that summer of 2021, and if he declines it, that would open up that extra space for Dallas next offseason. If he does not, then this doesn't help them as much salary-wise. But when you're looking at trading away Curry, Wright, and Jackson in exchange for Richardson and Johnson, assuming that Richardson declines that player option next offseason, which in an offseason in which there's going to be a lot of cap space, assuming Richardson has a good season, I would expect him to decline that option. That opens up almost $20 million more in salary cap space for this team, rather than having the contracts of Curry and Wright on the roster, which are both worth about $16 to $17 million combined. So significant moves there for Dallas. You could certainly look at it from a negative standpoint if Richardson does leave in free agency next offseason because Curry would have been under contract. But if they make a big move in free agency, then it makes sense to open up that space. And the other two moves here that I want to talk about are bringing in Trey Burke and Willie Cauley-Stein as well on some of those smaller deals. I think Burke was 3 years, 10, and then Cauley-Stein was just a 1 year, however much deal. Both these guys are going to be rotation players. Trey Burke is the kind of player that is fit really well in what Rick Carlisle wants to do offensively at the guard spot. He's a smaller guard, but he's quick, he can play make, he can shoot, and just provides a bit of a spark plug for this team off the bench, and I really like that pickup for them. And then Cauley-Stein just provides them a little bit more rim protection and athleticism at the 5 as well that they certainly needed at times. They were a little bit thin in the front court at times last year, and having to rely on someone like Boban all the time isn't exactly something you want. You want a little bit more of that versatility, having multiple options at the 5 spot. Willie Cauley-Stein allows them to do that. Now, the other part of this that I think is really, really notable for Dallas is I don't think that they would have made moves as aggressively as they did in terms of shaving salary off in 2021 if they weren't confident in their ability to go and get somebody in the summer of 2021. That doesn't necessarily mean a big-time max free agent. It could mean two different guys that are worth $20+ million a year. It could mean they go get, Oladipo and somebody else. But it makes me think it's kind of like when the Nets earlier on in the offseason last year started trading away guys like Alan Crabb and an extra first to shave off money so that they could get Kyrie and KD. And obviously that's much closer to the actual offseason. But generally, when teams start shaving money off like this, it indicates that they're confident in their ability to go and get somebody, and they think that they are well positioned to go and get someone in free agency that is really going to help this roster. And I really like the path that they took this offseason in contrast to what had been reported, because a handful of weeks ago it was being reported that the Mavs were willing to trade anybody on the roster not named Luka and not named Kristaps Porzingis to improve this roster and presumably to go and get another star to play alongside those guys. And I didn't love that plan of attack because I always thought that this team was still, kind of a year of marinating away from being a top team anyway. As good as Luka is, as good as KP is, I feel like they still needed another year to kind of grow and develop together before going to make that big move. And I would have preferred that they wait until the summer of 2021 to make that big move. And now, based off the moves that they made this offseason, it seems like that is the course of action that they're planning on taking. And for me personally, that is preferable. But the other part of this, though, is if we get to during the season, close to the trade deadline, whenever, if a star player comes available that Dallas wants to go and get, they have the opportunity to do it strictly from a contract standpoint. Asset-wise, they're still hurting a little bit. They do still owe a future pick to New York. And so that makes things a little bit more difficult in terms of the amount of picks that they can or cannot trade away. But when you're looking at the expirings of Tim Hardaway Jr., James Johnson, and then Josh Richardson, if they want to throw that in there as well, they can trade for any star on the market right now in terms of matching the contracts. That will not be an issue for Dallas, and you can put together some type of deal involving those two expirings and Josh Richardson and any number of picks or young players or whatever to really make this work. Now, one thing I did mean to mention at the beginning of this video is I know that they added people in the draft and on some smaller free agency deals as well. And quite frankly, I'm not knowledgeable enough about the players that they picked in this draft to sit here and BS you and tell you that they're going to be really good in their rotation. I didn't study the draft much this year just because I was so focused on the other stuff. And it was just such a weird draft evaluation year. So those young players could be assets. They could be really important to the rotation this year. Unfortunately, I'm not super knowledgeable on those guys. I'm not going to sit here and BS you and try and tell you that I am. So now, as we look towards next season, where does all this put Dallas? What does this look like for their chances next year? Well, for me, I'm working on a MVP prediction video talking about the MVP race, and Luka Doncic is certainly in that mix for me. I think he is amongst the top competitors to potentially win the MVP next year, depending on what their record ends up at. And that is always going to put your team in a chance of being a top 5, top 4 seed in the Western Conference. We kind of have to see how these pieces all fit together on this Dallas roster. And then, of course, there's always seemingly this Kristaps Porzingis question with this group as well, who it doesn't look like is going to start the season healthy and is going to wait a little bit before starting playing with the rest of the team at the beginning of the year to make sure that he is fully healthy. And we have to make sure that this is still the second guy that we need. Is Kristaps Porzingis a good enough player to be the second best player on a championship team, or is he going to be the third option and they go get another perimeter guy that plays well alongside Luka, and then they roll forward with those three guys, whether that be via trade, or an offseason move? I'm not sure, but regardless, Dallas has positioned themselves really well this offseason for a direct path towards the addition of another star, or worst case, a ton of really good complementary options in the summer 2021. Even if Josh Richardson opts out and all these other guys are expiring, and then you're looking at the roster next year and it's basically a handful of young guys plus Trey Burke, Luka and KP. Even if that's the case, they're also looking at about $40 million in cap space, which can allow them to bring in two $20 million guys or a handful of $10 million guys to round out this roster. Regardless, they're setting themselves up to be better this year than they were the year before, and with the opportunity to be better next year than they're going to be this coming season. And they could be way, way better if they manage to go get a star or a couple of really good complimentary guys, or they could be just a little bit better if they only get, a couple of those $10 million guys to their roster. So regardless, Dallas has an opportunity to continue to go in an upward direction here in terms of their trajectory. As long as, Luka and KP are healthy, they're going to continue to get better over the next couple of seasons. And that's about as good of a job as you can do from a front office standpoint to continue to be in position to improve your roster every single season. So we will have to kind of wait and see in terms of what that third puzzle piece is for them in terms of a potential star. They're always going to be a team on the radar. They've kind of built this reputation for making trades out of nowhere, whether that be with the Luka thing or the KP thing. And so I wouldn't be surprised if during the year they use those expirings to go and get a guy in the trade market, so they don't have to sweat out free agency and hope they get somebody, because they can trade for a star, and depending on what that salary number is and what they're sending out, they can still go and get another complimentary option, $10 to $15 million player this offseason. And that is a really, really good position to be in for Dallas, which makes them, in my opinion, the most interesting team in the league here moving forward, with potentially the highest ceiling as well, with a pretty much guaranteed MVP guy on the roster, in my opinion, in Luka Doncic at some point in his career. But that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.